Hokie Hangover, live on youtube.com/at the Hokie Hangover podcast. It's ODU week, boys. And once again, we make the voyage across the state to Norfolk. Or in Ricky's case, he makes the trek like 15 minutes from his house. How far are you from there now?
Okay. That part of Norfolk probably takes about 35 minutes or so, depending on traffic.
Okay. Not too far, though.
Yeah, not that bad.
Cool. Andrew, what's going on, dude?
Sorry I missed you guys on Sunday. It was a busy day. We had friends and family. We had birthdays. We had a little bit of recovery from what was an exciting, albeit maybe too exciting, game between Virginia Tech and Marshall. But got to see the whole cast of characters, right? Got to see Dr. Jeremy Counts. Got to see my good friend to my left here, one Ricky LeBlue. Among many others. I brought my friend from my day job. He flew out from California, and he was like, "We can't walk 3 feet without someone stopping and shaking your hand." I'm like, "That's Blacksburg, man. We're tight knit. We're all in this together." And we were all in it together through the first half. Luckily, in the second half, things opened up a little bit, just like we saw in week one. This time we didn't have a 17-point deficit to overcome. So there you go. There's the analysis you missed from me. Ricky, how are you?
Doing well. For those who listened to the recap of last week's episode, I started out with the tugboat as my background because I have been getting some flack from the folks that I needed to have some tech stuff in the background. So my fiance, being the angel that she is, went and found a bunch of like cheap memorabilia and decided to hang it up behind me. So now I can look like an actual tech fan on these podcasts.
There you go. You've made it. You're officially a tech fan. Good job.
Yeah.
You made it.
It's been a long time coming.
Welcome. Yeah.
Very, very happy to be here.
The whole thing about, the degree hanging up on your wall or wherever it is, that whole thing, paying all that money to go to tech.
Is it bad? I've never hung my degree up.
Oh, no, it's not bad. I've never hung mine up either.
It's in the envelope that I got it in, like the big envelope that they give it to you. Still in.
Well, mine's even worse. My parents bought a frame for mine, which, as I'm sure you guys know, those cost some money, right? Bought a frame for it. Yeah, bought a frame for it. Really nice. And I still haven't hung it up. So, in fact, it's not even in my house. It's at my parents' house.
So essentially, what you're saying is you're a bad son, is what that sounds like.
Not that as much as just like a couple different moves and travel and stuff. And I saw my parents last weekend. I was like, "Hey, do you guys have my diploma?" And they were like, "Yep, we do." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I might want to add that to the office here.
I don't want it. I'm glad I know where it is.
I'm glad. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I know where it is because I couldn't find it here. So I was like, well, this is trouble.
Yeah. I went about it in the way of, I sent my diploma from graduation home with my parents. And then 4 or 5 years later said, "Can I have that back? I think at this point in my life, I'd really like to get a nice frame for it and hang it up."
Yeah.
And voila, for Christmas, it came back framed. And now it hangs in the one spot you really can't see. Unfortunately, my podcast setup is not super ideal for the show insofar as the best show background stuff, i.e. I have a canvas picture of the Hokie Hangover logo. I have my degree. I have that banner that they gave if you donated $30-some-odd when the women's basketball team made the Final Four. That's all behind the camera. You guys just get Phil Nicholson, a bunch of books. I think we got the tech lunch pail that Clark Rulin made for me. We have the Virginia Tech in the 2000 national championship hat framed in a box so it can't get dirty. And then we have a helmet logo and a Brett Pry bobblehead. But as you can see, who are listening right now, you can't see that from here. So
I mean, behind my camera, I have the Our State flag when Tech beat UVA, and then above that we have kind of a panorama of Lane Stadium, but you can't see that.
I mean, I'll just add to this. I got a bunch of pennants.
I was going to say the only things we can see, Mike, is that you're a Notre Dame fan, which is no surprise.
I do have got a bunch of Boston Red Sox stuff over my shoulder too, which is like kind of hard to
Before we
see.
move on from that, number one, me and Ricky in our jobs, we want to look at the tech stuff, right? We want to escape. Mike's got to look at is Reggie Bush's face on the Zoom. So shout out to Mike McDaniel, who, in the words of my father, Andrew, I've been seeing a lot of your buddy Mike McDaniel in Sports Illustrated recently. He's doing a great job. So we'll pass that along. But
I've never met your dad, but I doubt he actually sounds like that. Yeah,
it's a dramatized version. It's the same way people impersonate me. So
that's fair enough.
It is what it is. But I come with compliments. I come with fun. How about them? Those Northern Illinois Huskies.
Hell yes.
That was something, man. That's what you get for rolling the dice with Riley Leonard. Is the only thing I'll say. Speaking of other teams, not Virginia Tech, the Pac-12 is not dead yet.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
I started my day today by tweeting out the literally I woke up and I read the late night news. I was in bed quite early last night. I read the late night news about the Pac-12 bringing on 4 Mountain West schools: Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, adding them to the conference under all the Pac-12, using the Pac-12 logo. Also using the money that they collected from all of the schools that exited the conference, which is very funny because now they're reviving their conference, which is great. I read that late night news, and the first thing I did on my Twitter account, which I'm sure some of you saw, was tweet out the picture of call the ambulance, but not for me, and that was the Pac-12. They need a couple more teams to make this like an official thing.
You said a couple, Mike? You said 2?
They need 2. It's not going to be the 2 that Ricky
teams?
wants. It's not going to be the 2.
That's interesting. They need 2 teams in the
gotta add
Pac-12
2
to make it an FBS conference. I wonder if they could find 2 teams to fill those slots.
If only Cal and Stanford.
Who would logically make sense there?
Oh, Cal and Stanford. Wow. Man, that's incredible.
Can't lose Cal. They're beating SEC teams.
They're giving
like
the
pride of the
ACC
conference.
credibility. They're giving the ACC credibility. The one thing I've always said about Cal is they're one of the great ACC institutions. That's the one thing I've always said about the Golden Bears.
Well, and I put this out on X earlier, but the Cal and Stanford are really important to the fabric of the ACC in the sense that they give the ACC something it's really lacking.
West Coast teams.
No, well, I mean that's one thing, but I was going to say they give the ACC 2 elitist institutions that are high on their own supply. So I think they fit really well in the ACC, which doesn't have any of those.
Right. Yeah,
There's
that's right.
none of that in this conference.
That's right.
Absolutely zero. So I think they really make this conference more diverse. I think that's where we're trying to get at here.
We certainly always lacked elitist institutions in the ACC. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, for me, as a longtime fan of the conference, that history, whether that be the band was on the field, whether that be Tiger Woods, Katie Ledecky, we can't lose that. So thank God for the grant of
We never had it.
Can't lose what you can't had.
I watch ACC Network every day. We had it.
Can't lose what you can't have.
If the ACC
Never
Network,
had.
If the ACC Network can play Michael Vick highlights, they, by the same logic, can play Tiger Woods highlights. And
I think that the Tiger Wood or the Michael Vick highlights are somewhat more appropriate, but I do agree with your point in the sense of there's some I don't know. It feels weird. It's almost like when ODU joined, I think it was Conference USA, and Conference USA was like one of the greatest Conference USA baseball players of all time, Justin Verlander. And they were like in the Colonial Athletic Conference. Like, you've got to be absolutely kidding me.
I mean, yeah, take advantage of that marketing when you have the opportunity. That's why it was very funny when the ACC was posting all the Katie Ledecky stuff when she was winning gold medals at the Olympics again. Yes, most decorated female Olympic swimmer ever. Built here. built, and it was like built here, like built in this conference in the ACC, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Are we really doing this?"
Hashtag
absolutely
go ACC,
absurd.
man. Come on.
So back to a serious note. Do we think that this is a good thing for college football?
It's a good thing for the Mountain West. That conference was like that conference was DOA. It was like almost as dead as the Pac-12. It's good for the four schools from the Mountain West. This is going to end up being, I'll tell you what this is going to end up being. This is end up going to be a bunch of Mountain West schools under just like better branding and like a more historic.
So it's
conference.
still going to be a crappy conference, is what you're telling me.
It is. I mean, it's going to be the Big Four conferences, and we're going to have like the group of 6 is what this is going to be. But it's fine. I think this what this ends up doing is this keeps alive the long-standing hope that I have, and I've made this joke on this podcast before, but I'm actually kind of serious, where we're going to be heading towards a college football super league, and there are going to be so many teams in the super league that they end up breaking them into divisions, and those divisions are going to be regional, and they're going to call them conferences, right? And everybody who's not in the Super League is going to be in a different division of football. We'll call that division of football the FCS, and we'll call the Super League
Call it
the FBS,
because we're going to be in it.
we'll call the big division of football the FBS, and we'll have schools that are grouped together by region, and we'll call them conferences. And we'll be literally right back to where we started. And having the Pac-12 do this keeps that hope alive that you have a home for some of these regional teams, right? And not to say that a bunch of these teams would be in that Super League, but my whole point is that this is just, time is a flat circle. Like,
I was
this
just
is
about
very
to say
cyclical.
time is a flat circle.
That's my whole point. That is my whole point. I know I contradicted myself saying that like these Pac-12 schools would be in a Super League, but my point is that time's a flat circle. I think this is all cyclical. I think eventually we're going to end up in a spot where the bubble kind of bursts from a financial standpoint, like a TV money standpoint, and TV execs are going to be like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because there's just going to be so much money. And then I think the other point, too, is there's a lot of money right now, obviously, with NIL and all the player, paying for rosters and all that stuff. And that nobody has any idea what that's going to look like in 5 years. But eventually, I think schools are going to get to the point where if it's going to continue the way that it is right now, like schools just are simply not going to be able to go to their donors anymore and be like, look, keep ponying up for these rosters, because people are just going to stop, like eventually are going to stop footing the bill flat out. So that's why I think we're heading towards like a salary cap type situation.
It's like saying the stock market just can't keep going up over time. Like these NFL players, these contracts can't go up anymore.
I just think there's a point. There's a point where we're going to be in more of like a salary cap type situation where the schools are paying and there's like actual regulations around it. Like that's where I think we're eventually heading with that piece of it, and I think that's where the TV money starts to chill out. Also,
yeah, I think what Mike was trying to say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in the stock market, right? That's inflated for a variety of reasons, many of which come from the Federal Reserve. The only reason that the revenue in college athletics has gone up so much is 2 reasons, right? You have the networks paying oodles and oodles of cash, and you have donors that have unloaded ungodly amounts of money into these athletic departments. One of those may be sustainable in the sense that the networks are always going to need programming. Now, whether or not they think that they're getting the value of it anymore is a different discussion. In my opinion, though, I don't think that the donor aspect of it is very sustainable.
That's where I'm at too. Yeah.
And I say that because even like 10 years ago, what the donors were putting up was like paled in comparison to what they're having to put up now on a yearly basis for what is essentially your roster payroll. And some of these schools like Oklahoma State or A&M or I don't know, USC, UCLA, Ohio State, they have pretty big bankrolls, but
Yeah.
only so many schools can foot that bill. At least the donor base can foot that bill for so long, and until you find a way to, I guess, even out some of that share and make more of that share come from other sources, I do think you're going to have some issues with programs we just don't have the funds anymore to be able to have a $30 million roster because of all these NIL payments.
Well, I mean, you're seeing the concern there now too. Like schools are cutting other sports already to try to figure out a way to pay for it. So you already kind of see the concern within the athletic department.
Who saw that coming, right? Yeah. Who thought that was possible?
We only mentioned that on this podcast a million times, Andrew.
Is there no concern that this goes in the direction of, say, Apple wants to, and obviously this is all theoretical, so don't think too deeply into this, but Apple has vested interest in making USC good because they've come to some agreement with USC where now Apple's logo is on the field at USC, and we're seeing that already in college football.
Right, yeah.
And what is a drop in the bucket in the Apple advertising budget is more than the donors can pay. So suddenly Apple is doing NIL deals with the high-end players on the USC roster and paying them like pros.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. That could very well happen. And unregulated, in my view, that is the inevitable direction this thing goes.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I've always thought is that college football needs more corporate advertising. That's the one thing I've always thought about. I really have yearned for that. There needs to be there needs to be regulations.
You're telling me that you wouldn't want a picture of a beautiful Tots rail on the field at Lane Stadium?
I would. I would. But
no, just wait until Virginia Tech has to wear a bacon logo for Smithfield on their helmet once a year. Come on.
Somebody on X mentioned today that they would love to see like a Wild Turkey sponsorship. And I'm like, yeah, and it would end up being like an alternate uniform where like they would get the Hokie Bird and he'd be like hammered drunk off of Wild Turkey, and he would be like drunk off his ass on the helmet. And then they'd have like a special costume on the side of where Hokie Bird's acting like a belligerent ass.
No, that's where we're headed. In advance, the new mascot, one Dr. Jeremy Counts.
There it is.
Can't wait to.
Love you,
I was gonna say, can't wait for that to happen within the next 5 years, and then me having to explain to like my then 7-year-old, yeah, that the turkey's just being silly. He's he just had too much fun and got a little dizzy. Yeah, that'll be fun. Excited for that. I just hate conference realignment so much. I just can't stand it. I hate everything about it. I hate that they continue to do this or continue to talk about it once the football's actually on. They had all summer. I understand some of this stuff is the timing of it's inevitable, but I feel like the school presidents and the television executives, they almost want the storylines around college football to revolve around just schools moving around rather than the actual like product, which is interesting because the product is what they're paying for. Like you're not paying to like realignment's a byproduct of all these television contracts, but it's like not the reason you're getting into these TV deals. Like the reason you're getting into it is because of the actual sport on the field. So it's all very frustrating to me. I'm just so as just like you guys know me to be a college football sicko. I am just so tired of this. It's just killing the regionality of the sport, which is like everything it's been built on. We're making everything about the national championship that historically, and even more so now, like only around 5 teams can win it every year. Sometimes maybe a few more like fringe teams could like get into the dance, which is why, by the way, I think 12 teams is too many. I've made that statement clear before.
Yep.
To each their own on that. That doesn't really. If you want more teams in for access, that's fine. But like the same 5 teams are always there at the end.
If you want more teams in for access, go watch college basketball.
Right. You're dealing with the casual when they tell you that, oh, well, there are upsets in college basketball. Why can't that happen in football? It doesn't happen at that level of the sport. It just does not. It does not happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority in that I think the NCAA tournament is way too big. I think the college football playoff is way too big, and it devalues your season champion, in my opinion, and it's all just a money grab.
The NCAA tournament is fine. It just doesn't need to get any bigger.
Agree.
It's at its max, in my view.
Yeah.
College football playoff. I'm not going to judge something that I haven't seen in practice yet, but my initial reaction is the same as Mike's. That from everything that the modern era of college football has indicated, you are just creating a more likely scenario for a Georgia-Alabama national championship every single year. Maybe Ohio State sneaks in there. Maybe Michigan sneaks in there every other year. But you will see more rematches in the national championship than you've ever seen before. And maybe for the casual fan, that's cool. What about bringing back the BCS?
Bingo. Here for
it. In the immortal words of the
people are stupid.
Crows, don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone?
Yeah.
And we have ventured down a slippery slope on multiple levels. And I think it only gets worse from here. The only solace I can take in this is that maybe in the best of the rest, 10, 15 years down the line conference that Virginia Tech ends up in, we get some cool matchups like a regular season game against Oklahoma State or something like that. I don't know. I'm just trying to look at the bright side here, but that can be tough.
I am willing to make a bet with whatever listener is interested that there will never be a team seeded worse than like 6 that will ever win the national title in this format, ever. Because the top 4 teams, right, it's going to be the 4 power conference champions. Then you're going to have the highest ranked group of 5 is going to make it in. But like the 5th seed, the 6th seed, the 7th seed, the 8th seed, those are going to the top other couple teams in their respective conferences. But they're all, like Andrew just mentioned, they're all going to be in a rematch. I don't ever see a scenario. Maybe there's like an SEC school that, loses the conference title, or a Big Ten school like loses the conference title, ends up with the 5 or the 6 seed, and then we know they're like one of the couple best teams in the country and they could make a run. I don't think there is any chance that a team seeded worse than like 7 wins a national championship. I'd be blown away if that were the case. That would shock me.
First of all, it's going to be like number 8 Alabama who lost their non-conference game against Michigan and like 2 other close games. They'll eventually win. If you gave the current system, which it won't make it, but if you gave it 20 years, that would happen. But producer Scott comes in the comments and says, "I thought this was the ODU preview," to which I say, "I thought you were making me an Excel spreadsheet."
Oh man,
got him.
I guess we can get in the ODU preview now.
I guess we could talk about ODU a little bit now.
Well, let's talk about the series first, because people are real up in arms about it, and they're real upset with, I guess, comments that Brent Pry and Whit Babcock made in a David Teal article, which, I mean, okay, fine. You guys are, fans are frustrated about the series, right?
Why are fans frustrated, Mike?
They're frustrated because Virginia Tech is going on the road to Norfolk, Virginia. Here's the problem. here's the problem that I see, right? And I think it's good that Virginia Tech fans have high expectations. Touched on this a little bit on the recap of the Marshall game. The expectations don't match the level of recruiting or the level of coaching that Virginia Tech's had over the last decade plus on a year-by-year basis, right? Which is fine because we all grew up watching Frank Beamer's Virginia Tech, right? So that's fine. That's understandable. We used to beat the brakes off of teams like this, right? That's my overarching takeaway. If you beat them by 100, nobody's complaining about the series. Nobody's complaining about it. I mean,
that
I
was
get
my point. Yeah.
I get I get the going to Norfolk piece every year is frustrating, but if you want to purport yourself as hey, this is our state, you should want to play any team, anywhere, anytime, and beat them by 1,000. That should be the mindset. The fact that you're not doing that is why fans are actually upset. People are mad at Whit Babcock for signing up for this, acting like, oh, us traveling to Norfolk is the reason why we lost the game. No, just go to go to Norfolk and just totally pants this team. I mean, beat them by 1,000 points, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
People need to remember that it's actually not Norfolk, Scott. It's Norfolk. As someone who lives down there, anyway. The reason folks are pissed off about this is because we've gone in there twice and lost. And, folks want this series to get canceled or get shortened or something along those lines. And I've always had kind of a contrarian view on this in the sense that I think that Tech should relish these opportunities to walk into a recruiting hotbed, certainly what used to be one in this area, and beat the absolute hell out of ODU. That's what should happen. And, there's a lot that gets made about the fact that Tech is 5.5 hours away from here. And I get that. But if you want to talk about marketing within the state and you want to be the flagship program and you want to be where the buck stops when it comes to football in the Commonwealth, you have to own these rivalries. You have to win these games 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And that just has not been the case here. And fans can try and run from this all they want, but I think it needs to be the absolute opposite approach. I think that it would do Virginia Tech a lot of good to, instead of focus on trying to cut a check to get out of this series that you only signed up for to save money, and actually go in there and use it as an opportunity to beat up on programs that you should be beating up on, and do so in a way that helps you build your brand within the state. And if you can't do that, then you have bigger problems than playing ODU on the road anyway, and we need to stop talking about it.
I mean, you guys made all the good points there before I could even make them, but it is a inferiority issue. You're letting not only what should be your little brother, you're letting what should be your son embarrass you not once but twice. And we can't go back and change the past. And there is an argument to be made, on a higher level, right, that Virginia Tech shouldn't be playing non-Power 5 teams on the road. And in theory, that sounds great. But you know what? Takes legitimacy away from that theory. Losing those games that they're going and playing. It's what are you better than?
Yeah.
What are you better than? And yes, I know that the plan was, like we talked about, to take an opportunity where Virginia Tech, let's be honest, took this series as an opportunity to save money. And wrapped it in the Christmas present wrapping. That is, we're going to go impress the recruits because it sounded good, because ODU was a team that hadn't even been at the FBS level for a decade at the point of scheduling. And we can't lie and say it didn't blow up in our face. But at this point, to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to run away with our tail between our legs.
It's totally chicken shit.
Yeah,
Just beat him by 40 points.
Yeah.
Just beat him by 40 points. This team returned like 5 starters off of a. What did they finish last year? 6 and 7. They returned 5 starters off that team. They were a mid Sun Belt team last year.
A team that you beat.
They turned
the team that you beat, by the way. Right.
They turned ECU over 5 times and lost.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a bad football team, folks. And if Virginia Tech doesn't, and we're maybe slightly transitioning into an actual preview here,
It's
but
fine.
If you don't beat the brakes off of a team like ODU, and by beating the brakes off of them, I mean 21 or more points, you have to look in the mirror, and it's the only one that you can look at this point. Their star linebacker, I think his name's Jason Henderson. He may not be available in this game. Yep. They're going to be starting most likely a very new quarterback. Grant Wilson's probably not going to play in this game.
Yeah,
Mike mentioned
very new
the fact
quarterback, or a quarterback who, by all accounts, is not that good.
Yeah, and then you have a roster that's got a ton of new players on it, a ton of turnover, a ton of inexperience, and a team that, for all their credit, they played South Carolina pretty hard in week 1, but this is just a bad football team. So do what you're supposed to do against bad football teams, and if you don't do that, then it says a lot more about you.
Yeah, and let's be honest. Virginia Tech has lost twice in Norfolk. And I don't know if I pronounced that right. I probably didn't. But
Scott will be in there to fact check you in the comment.
2018 was Justin Fuente's worst roster. 2022 was the worst Virginia Tech roster of my lifetime, and I'm almost 30 years old. Virginia Tech was only a 3.5-point favorite in that 2022 game. And they lost. Mostly because of miscues. This team is supposedly the best Virginia Tech roster of the last 10 years. We shouldn't have this sick feeling in the pit of our stomachs. And frankly, where I'm putting my financial backing does not. But it's still hard not to go into a game like this nervous. But you look at offense, you look at defense, you look at special teams. And Tech should have a definitive edge, in all 3 phases of the game here. But it's about execution. And, it's hard to buy in when it's something that, from a program perspective, you haven't seen before. That's crazy because the game has been played twice at ODU. We still haven't seen it yet. So, to those of you out there in our listener base who have that level of anxiety, we hear you. And we stand arm in arm with you, and we hope to be with you on Sunday night laughing at our fear of the worst.
Old Dominion ranks 119th in the FBS through 2 games in scoring offense. They're averaging 16.5 points per game. Now, they played South Carolina, right? So it's an SEC defense. I don't care what you think of South Carolina. That's an SEC defense. And they played East Carolina, who looks improved, right? But
not on offense.
Not on offense, right? And South Carolina's offense is, well, they scored a lot on Kentucky. I think that says more about Kentucky. Okay, so Lenora Sellers, South Carolina's quarterback, I'm not sure he can complete a pass more than 7 yards down the field. So I think that says more about Kentucky. My point is that this is, once again, for, I'd argue, the 3rd consecutive week, about Virginia Tech. Okay? This is about Virginia Tech, once again. You guys touched on it. Grant Wilson, the Old Dominion quarterback, probably not playing here. Their other options are Colton Joseph, a redshirt freshman, or Emmett Moorhead, less said, former Boston College quarterback. That was the other option, but pretty sure he's banged up. So Colton Joseph, the redshirt freshman, would be the other guy, the likely starter if Grant Wilson is unable to go. Seems like, just kind of reading the tea leaves as we sit here on Thursday evening, it seems a little unlikely that he's going to be able to go. Georgia State really has trouble running the football. Aaron Young is their best running back. He hasn't even rushed for 200 yards yet this year. Yeah, I mean, this is not a very good football team. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. The Jason Henderson thing, like, Jason Henderson is a potential All-American linebacker. He's going to be playing on Sundays. I mean, if he doesn't play, I don't know really what Old Dominion's going to do from a pass rush standpoint. That's a concern I would have as a Monarchs fan if he's unable to go. He's been really banged up so far this year. He was a second-team All-American last year. Like, he's no slouch. He's an excellent player. Albeit a little undersized. That's why he's still playing college football, but he will be playing on Sundays. This is about Virginia Tech. You know, I think I could see a scenario here where Virginia Tech's defense plays a lot like it did last week against Marshall. I could see a very similar type game plan. I guess the one thing I want to note is Colton Joseph is, from all indications from the scouting report, a little more mobile than Grant Wilson, and that's the type of quarterback that Virginia Tech struggles with. So just, I guess, keep that in mind. But yeah, this is an offensive line that did return some talent, right? So they do have some folks coming back. This is a defense that lost a good bit. They only had like 3 or 4 starters returning on that side of the football. One of them was Henderson, who probably won't play. So this is all about Virginia Tech. You know, I think the defense, get off the field. I think the key for the offense is what we were just harping on in the entire Marshall recap, is commit to the run and just run it down their throats. Stop getting cute. Get ahead in the game, right? And kind of play from ahead, because I think when we've seen this Virginia Tech offense at its best, it's when it's not having to claw from behind, right? You can just stay ahead of the chains, stay ahead on the scoreboard, and don't dig yourself into a hole here, especially on the road in a place where you just have not had a ton of success, weirdly.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back in 22, right? And again, Tech was only like a 3-point favorite, 3.5, 2.5. I forget the actual number. But I remember previewing that game, and we said things along the lines of like, well, it's Old Dominion, right? But that running back, he's a real talent. It's Old Dominion, but that tight end, I forget his name, he was a transfer out of Penn State. He might be pretty good. Well, it's Old Dominion, but that Allie Jennings kid, I wish we had him. But even though it seems like the running back, the tight end, and the wide receivers might be better for Old Dominion, what could possibly go wrong? This is not that situation, especially offensively, when we look at Old Dominion. I mean, I don't think Old Dominion knows who they are offensively at this point, right? This is a program, as many Group of 5 programs will be going forward. Maybe even ACC programs will be going forward, where if you have talent, you lose it, and then you're going to be circling in new talent because some of the guys that you circled in the last time around didn't end up being the real deal. Yeah. And that's how you end up with 50-some-odd new players on your roster, because you're going to have as much, if not more, attrition than you have graduation. But from a schematic perspective, unlike we saw with Marshall and unlike we saw with Vanderbilt, these are the same guys that Brent Pry and Tyler Bowen and Chris Marv and all the rest of them have seen 2 times already. And this is a team that realistically, after close matchups with South Carolina, where they were laying it all out there on the field, East Carolina, where you hope they were. They lost the game. You hope they were trying. There should be nothing that you haven't already seen on tape. So, in my view, as we look at not only this game, but the season overall, anything less than a cover of the 14.5-point spread, unless it's a backdoor cover in some crazy situation on ODU's part, makes me feel like the road's about to get a hell of a lot more challenging. But we know that one way or the other, the road's going to get a hell of a lot more challenging. But if Tech essentially plays the same game against Old Dominion that they played against Marshall, and that effectively they played against Vanderbilt, you start to think that these problems might be systematic in year 3 when it comes to lack of preparation. And that would make me really worried because I don't doubt Greg Schiano's ability to get his guys out of bed in the morning.
Right.
And I certainly don't doubt, at a minimum, the talent that Mario Cristobal has on that roster. And that is who you are playing in the following 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, and not to say that those games aren't theoretically winnable. Miami is going to be a heck of a lot more challenging, but from what we know now, I'm not ruling out beating Rutgers. I'm not even ruling out Virginia Tech being favored going into the game. But it's going to require what we haven't seen yet, and that is a 4-quarter assertion of dominance from a team that, again, frickin' 14 days ago at the time of this recording was being talked about by guys who have a seat on the desk at College game day as a fringe college football playoff contender.
Yeah.
And now we're having conversations about Old Dominion. So, maybe it's a what have you done for me lately world. Maybe we're reactionary, fan journalists who have seen too much before to have too much of an optimistic attitude in this situation. But do something to put a smile on everyone's face. And that doesn't change the challenge that's ahead of you, but it changes the narrative surrounding the team, at least to a degree, at least for a week. And that's what this team needs right now. Because when Brent Pry came into the locker room, the media room, and said, "Oh, aren't you guys happy with the win?" No, we're not.
Nope. One thing I want to note, and we've pushed this on the recap. We talked about it a bunch after the Marshall game. Is this 2-game trend where Virginia Tech is struggling with third down play calling, keeping the offense on the field on third down, and a lot of that has to do with first and second down. The one thing I want to note here is there is zero reason for Tyler Bowen to not be aggressive on third down against this Old Dominion defense. Old Dominion comes into this game ranked 101st nationally in third down percentage defense. They cannot get off the field on third down through the first 2 games of the year against 2 relatively mediocre offenses, which, by the way, is what Virginia Tech has been, right? So,
yep.
Just there's no reason to play this thing conservative, be aggressive, and that doesn't mean be aggressive and throw it around 50 times. That means be aggressive in the run game, stick with what's working, and leave no doubt here, right?
Before we get into our picks, what's the score after the first quarter in this game?
10-0 Old Dominion. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Man.
I'm joking. 2 things here. Number one, before we even get into that, I want to give a shout out to some of our listeners in the Big Apple, New York. But hey, I'm not talking to you, buddy. apartment 10F at an undisclosed location. I know you're listening. So shout out to them. But yeah, one point I did want to make there, though. Doug Bowman brought this up on the Inside the Tunnel podcast. Virginia Tech's, some crazy analytic that dude looks at, very mid, like almost definitively FBS mid, 60 out of 120 on offense. Since then, I've been thinking, if you took just the second halves, top 15.
Just put
If
together
you
a
took
four-quarter
just the
game.
first half, 115 out of 120. It has been a tale of two teams, two halves, two cities. And it's almost even more infinitely frustrating because you know that the Mr. Hyde to that Dr. Jekyll exists.
Right.
But the people that are in charge of unlocking it just haven't been able to do so. After the guys run out of the tunnel. So that's the challenge here. Again, I will be more on the optimistic side. I will say the score after a quarter is 7-0 Virginia Tech.
I was going to say 7-3. Was my prediction. Hokies.
I'm going to say 7-3 Old Dominion.
Ricky just wants to see social media burn.
I'm going to be at this game. You think I want to watch that shit?
No.
Have you been at the last two?
No.
I was not at 2018, but I was at 2022. And that was...
You said both. I'm going to start a GoFundMe.
That...
Keep Ricky LeBlue out of the stadium.
Whatever
it takes. Slash his tires. I'll pay your bills. Come on.
I will be at this game with Clark and Izzy Ruland, as well as a buddy of mine who is a ODU alum who roots for Virginia Tech football. So he'll be wearing a Tech shirt at this game.
At my beginning of the show shout outs, I did not give a shout out to Clark. I missed Izzy. Saw Clark. My only regret is not stealing one of his Krispy Kremes.
Missed out, man. Missed out.
Shout out Clark and Izzy. ACC picks?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Saturday, noon. Oh, by the way, we have 10 or 11 games this weekend. Depends on whether or not you want to count the Virginia Tech game in that.
Scott, you got a lot of work to do, buddy.
Yeah.
What are we paying you for?
That's true. Saturday. Just kidding, Scott. Saturday, noon Eastern. Memphis. Traveling on the road to Tallahassee. Playing in a stadium that's smaller than their own because Florida State's got a bunch of renovations going on. Anyway, notwithstanding.
That's wild. That's a wild thought.
This is the Mike Norvell Bowl. Florida State, a 6.5-point favorite. Florida State? Question mark?
No. Give me Memphis.
Just feels trendy.
Memphis has one thing that Florida State doesn't. And that's that FedEx money. Give me the Tigers plus 6.5.
Feels trendy. That's all I'm saying.
It does feel trendy. But don't you love teams suing the ACC is 0-2 against Georgia Tech and Boston College? Does it get any better than that?
Their total ass. Yeah, it feels pretty good.
Does it get any better than that?
Feels
it's
pretty
like,
good.
What a
get
shame.
off your high horse.
Best part of conference realignment so far. Louisiana Tech traveling to NC State. NC State got that ass beat last Saturday night. Noon ACC Network. NC State a 21.5-point favorite. Give me the Wolfpack to bounce back here. Louisiana Tech is awful. They are bad.
Yeah, Dorn is a good coach, not a great coach. But after a loss like that, he's going to have his boys right. I'll take NC State with, despite being 21.5-point favorites. They can cover that.
Yeah.
If I learned anything from the 2015 Independence Bowl, it's that Louisiana Tech is a team that can score points. Blake Baker, the freshman, a quarterback who I've been following for a long time. I think they hang in there. Give me Louisiana Tech, the Bulldogs, plus 21.5.
I'm watching this Texas State, Arizona State game, which will be over by the time a lot of you listen to this podcast. And my God, it's entertaining. Good Thursday night college football.
Is it Duke Northwestern entertaining, or is it actually?
There's no such thing as more entertaining than that, Ricky.
That was some hashtag sick shit. Number 24 Boston College traveling on the road to Columbia. No, not Columbia, South Carolina. Columbia, Missouri, to take on the number 6 Missouri Tigers. 12:45 SEC Network. Guys, I think Missouri is good, but they haven't played anybody yet. We don't really know anything about them. Missouri is a 16-point favorite. This is going to be a case study, in my opinion, of what happens when you go against like an SEC offensive and defensive line for like a good SEC team. Give me the Tigers and all those points.
I think you, despite being a noted Thomas Castellanos hater, I think you are discounting the abilities of Bill O'Brien. Give me the Eagles.
Oh.
To be able to, they're not going to win outright, but they're going to keep this pretty close.
Missouri rolls. Come on.
Yeah, this feels like Tennessee, NC State-ish to me, but we'll see. Ball State. Anybody interested? I will say, Ricky, before we move on to this game, you might be onto something with Bill O'Brien. That's what I'll say.
I think so.
I think you're onto something. Ball State traveling to the Hornets' nest that is Hard Rock Stadium. Canes, yeah. Canes.
Calling it a Hornets' nest is one thing, but give me the Canes.
Canes. Andrew, you taking Ball State? You feeling frisky?
Chirp, baby. Plus 36.5.
Oh my God.
The boys from Muncie are going to come in and make a scene. I like Ball State to lose by about 33.
Okay. This is
it's not where I thought that was going.
We're not going to have
and by the way, folks, they laugh at me. Who's the one whose net worth increased last week by picking Tennessee Tech plus 55.5? Yeah, Georgia Bulldogs. If you only score 49, you can't cover 55.5. Kirby Smart, time to go back to school, buddy.
Congratulations on that win.
Is that driving school, Andrew? He needs to go back to.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Correctional school.
We're on fire. Let's go.
At least they have good lawyers in Athens. Ball State is not the MAC team that I'm going to be riding with this week. Let's just put it that way.
Is it Northern Illinois again?
There are no other MAC games in
I was
play
going to say,
in the
do we
ACC.
have one that we're about to pick?
No, I'm just saying in general, like the MAC has been rolling. Obviously, Northern Illinois, Bowling Green made it interesting against Penn State. By the way, I'm holding that Bowling Green over 6.5 win ticket. Feeling fantastic about that.
Controversial
Feeling
opinion.
damn good.
In conference realignment, maybe it's the MAC and the Sun Belt that are getting better and coming closer to the top. Just saying.
Maction, baby.
You know, I've always said Tuesday night football, cream of the crop. VMI, Georgia Tech, 3:30.
No
ESPN
idea what
Plus.
the spread is on this.
I could go down the rabbit hole and find one, but any takers on VMI here? Any takers?
No.
No.
This is a bounce back game for the Jackets.
Yeah,
Agree.
I can't even make a joke about it.
It's fair.
He tried.
Don't you dare.
Joey.
There's Joey. Don't you dare. Don't you
Throw
dare
that
pick
up on the
VMI,
stream,
you bastard.
Mike. Throw that up.
I'm going to be recording with Joey here shortly. Don't you dare pick VMI, you bastard. Joey is my co-host on my ACC podcast, for those of you who
Love it.
don't know Joey. Joey's a very, very good friend of mine. We're in business together, damn it. West Virginia on the road at Pittsburgh. Backyard brawl. 3:30 ESPN2. Joey, now that I know you're watching, don't hold me to any of these picks here when we make picks of our own here in about 20 minutes. I don't have a good read on this game at all. I think West Virginia is probably a little bit better than they looked in that opener against Penn State. I think, well, I know Pittsburgh's coming off of a really emotional come-from-behind win, against Cincinnati. Down whatever that was, 26-7, I think it was, or they were down a lot and came storming back. West Virginia, 1.5 point favorite here. I don't have a great read on either of these two teams. I think I'm going with Pitt because I like their offense a little bit more. Eli Holstein's been pretty good, and I think they can scheme some stuff up here against West Virginia. I think I'm leaning Pitt at home. Plus, they'll actually have a home field advantage at Old Acrisure Stadium. They'll actually sell that place out. So, give me Pitt.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often. In these kinds of games, I always try and figure out which coaching staff do I believe in more. And that's tough for me because I don't think Neil Brown is all that good, and I really don't like Pat Narduzzi, but I think Narduzzi is a little bit better. Give me the Panthers. Home dogs. Man.
Like that spot.
I'll take the opposite philosophy on that in these kind of games. I like to look at who I think the better quarterback is, and I'll take Garrett Green.
Interesting choice. UConn traveling to Duke. UConn 16.5 point underdog, 6 p.m. ESPN Plus. I kind of like UConn plus the 16.5.
If you watch this game, get your head examined. In case you forgot, I have put a year-long ban on Duke. So, give me the Huskies.
First of all, Ricky, number one, watch your mouth. Because the team...
I forgot we have a Notre Dame and
we
Duke
root
fan
for
on the podcast.
a program here at Virginia Tech that hasn't, in the lifetime of a child who started their first day of kindergarten this year, be in a Power 5 school that's not in the ACC. And Duke does it every single year, occasionally twice. And that's a dog on us more than, because
calling Northwestern a Power 5 program is indeed correct, but in essence doesn't really ring true, Andrew.
In name
only. The Big Ten's supposed to be a big deal. I remember just a few years ago, I had to wear a mask when I walked into the bar, but they were playing Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. That's a program. Whatever happened to Pat Fitzgerald? Oh, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, let me tell you.
Either way,
how much time you have?
It's like, this is now a documentary. When we said Old Dominion preview,
what if I told you?
Really didn't mean it. No, I'll take Duke because all they've done is impress me to this point. Manny Diaz, you'd think this was his first shot at this head coaching thing because he is doing more with less, not necessarily what he might have been known for before.
He's coaching his ass off, but that team is just awful.
That offense is awful. Let's be clear. The Duke offense is awful. Defensively, they're actually pretty respectable.
My last point. In terms of if you watch this, you're a sicko. Well, if you remember the general public, you are more likely to watch it because this game is what's going to be keeping the Virginia Tech Old Dominion game off of actual television. You need to have an ESPN Plus subscription to watch. Duke will be on ACC Network Extra, which will be regional sports networks here in the Mid-Atlantic Southeast. So just saying, if you turn to whatever channel we usually get these bad games on, you're going to watch Duke. So I would recommend getting an ESPN Plus subscription or making a friend that has one.
Or finding whatever alternate URL the Stream East is using now that they got busted.
This podcast would never encourage people to commit criminal activities.
Never.
Yeah, it's one thing I've always said about this podcast. We're stand-up citizens. NC Central, what a great transition. We're stand-up citizens. I'm about to talk about NC Central playing North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Any takers? Any
No.
takers?
No.
Well, NC Central better cover, or there goes my 401k.
Okay, there we go. That's
There
what I'm
it
talking
is.
about.
No, I'm
there it
kidding.
is. Yeah.
I think this
There
game is
goes
going to
the
be on
network.
TV too, not tech. What is going
I
on?
cannot believe that they somehow got Ole Miss on the Cheeks W network.
The Cheeks W. Ole Miss,
That's
number
incredible.
5. Number 5, Ole Miss.
Yeah, I
traveling
haven't. I have not
Winston-Salem.
seen Tom Brenneman so excited
Careful.
since.
Hey, I had forgotten he was calling games when I saw him in the press box last weekend. I was very taken aback, and then I remembered that he is joining the illustrious crew of ACC broadcasters.
Good for him. We're happy for him.
I am. Welcome back. And there's a deep drive to left.
And there it is. I am. This game feels like a trap. I think Ole Miss is like 30 points better than Wake, but I don't really get this line. I'm going to go with Wake Forest here, plus 21.5.
Give me the Rebs.
Yeah, losing the UVA seems like a big enough red flag for me for a team that is effectively in the college football playoff if it started today. So we'll go with that.
Maryland UVA. Actually, this game's going to be a lot of fun, to be honest with you. 8 o'clock ACC Network. I'm going to go with the team that has a better quarterback, Anthony Calandria. I actually like UVA at home here.
I'm never going to say
Have we learned nothing, Michael? Have we learned nothing?
I watched UVA Wake Forest last weekend. That's what I'll say. I like UVA here.
Joey, if you're still listening, going to need you to fire up the Mickey Mouse music here in a few minutes. Give me the Terps.
people aren't going to like this because there's never a reason to root for UVA. But from an ACC perspective, for a pride of the conference perspective, if UVA can beat Maryland, that might effectively help Virginia Tech recruiting. And it certainly would help the pride of the conference overall. That being said, despite what we've seen out of UVA over the course of the last couple of weeks, which really is just last week, but even still, they are more impressive in a small sample size that we believed they would be. Don't think it's enough. Give me Maryland.
Fair enough. San Diego State, Cal. The one thing I've said about these two institutions is that one of them is a Pac-12 school, and the other one is Cal. Cal is an 18.5-point favorite.
Just what we needed was an Atlantic Coast Conference game between two teams from California.
And now I will say too, like there is an asterisk. I know they're not going to be an ACC team. I'm sorry, excuse me. Not going to be a Pac-12 team for a couple more years, but I just
well, hopefully these two will be playing conference games here shortly.
That joke still slapped.
I got to take Cal.
Cal's good, man.
Cal may be, as Mike likes to say, a bit of a wagon.
Wagon watch. I think we're on wagon watch with
the Bears.
Golden Bears. Yep. I like Cal as well. Andrew.
Is there a bigger man on campus in this country this week than Fernando Mendoza? The kid's a talent. And I think that if anyone on his campus cared about football, he'd be having a heck of a week. Give me the Golden Bears. Could they be your backdoor college football playoff contender? Probably not. But it's week 2. We're overreacting. So I got them on my radar.
I was going to say, if acting like Cal cares about football, they're too busy being social activists on campus and locking campus down. So not going to have any of that.
I'm going to be live on my basketball conference ACC football podcast here shortly with Joey Weaver, where I will be talking about Cal in a theoretical sense, where I'm going to be workshopping a take that they perhaps could be a team to jump up and make the ACC title game.
No.
You are a sick man. You are a
Yeah.
sick man.
Look at the schedule, then get back to me. Virginia Tech, Old Dominion, 6 p.m. Eastern, ESPN Plus.
I'm so glad I don't have to stress about finding a way to watch this game. I can go be miserable in person.
Give me the Hokies. I think they cover. I don't see it on the Old Dominion side. I don't see Virginia Tech's going to have to play week 1 defense here, and I guess we'll see which defense shows up. I don't see it with Old Dominion. I don't see it at the skill positions. I don't see it up front defensively. I don't see it if Jason Henderson doesn't play. They're going to be on a redshirt freshman backup quarterback in all likelihood. Don't see it. Think Virginia Tech plays better offensively here. I think they put together more of a collective 4-quarter game. I like the Hokies by like 17 to 20 points.
Virginia Tech is better when I'm a pessimist. So this game's going to be ugly. This is not going to be a fun watch.
Thank
just
you for
like
your
Marshall
service.
wasn't. Yeah. Virginia Tech wins this game, in my opinion, winning their first game in Norfolk, which, for the love of God, that's a line I never want to have to repeat again. Let's go 24-14 Hokies.
Cap. Andrew.
Despite the pessimism, I will take the more optimistic take here. For the sake of my mental health, I have to believe that this team that we saw beat the brakes off of inferior ACC competition. Like, when I say this team, I mean, like, last year it was pretty much the exact same team, and you would figure that some of the players got better, and we got Ali Jennings back.
Mm-hmm.
Beat the brakes off of other ACC opponents. This is Old Dominion. Virginia Tech has a strong edge in all 3 phases of the game. Like you mentioned, there might be one Old Dominion player who very well might not play that, could start on Virginia Tech. I'm taking the alt spread here.
Oh my God.
In real life.
What?
I'm a sicko, man. I don't know.
Oh my God.
You hear the backup quarterback might be coming in rumors.
What
You
is your
think
alt
what-
spread, Andrew?
23.5.
Oh my God. Oh, I'll be a happy man if that happens, buddy.
I don't know about all that, but
I'll be a happy man.
In my mind, that's the barometer for a semblance of confidence going into Rutgers, right? A 24-point victory.
Sure, but
So let's bet on it. Let's bet on it. Let's have to cut down on pleasures next week if it doesn't happen. Give me the Hokies. I would not actually go out and recommend doing what I did, and I very well might cash out of it.
I was gonna
Probably
say,
within
Andrew,
15 minutes before the game. If
Andrew
they
just
let
lit money on fire live on YouTube and Twitter.
me. But at 14 and a half, I do like the Hokies here to get, that monkey off their back, if you will, and win a game in Norfolk.
There it is.
And hopefully never lose one again.
we'll see
I
on the
parlay
recap.
all the future ODU road games.
We'll see you on the recap. Rate, review, subscribe. Go Hokies.